All right, and it looks like we are up and rolling here. So 8 years ago, 18-year-old me posed this question on Mr. Philip Bloom's blog. Why does a cinematographer need more than just one lens? This is the core of the question that I had posed to Mr. Bloom. And at the time, it was more focused around speed boosters, since that's the subject of his blog post at the time. But the question really just came down to, why can't a cinematographer just zoom with his feet instead of changing lenses? Well, I'm here to answer my question from 8 years ago. Let's talk about it. So, a lot of this comes down to just pure practicality. In a lot of environments, you won't necessarily have the room to get a wide shot on a 50mm or 85mm lens. You're going to need to switch to, say, a 16 in order to be able to get a proper wide shot in a small environment. The other part of this question is going to have to relate to aesthetics. So when you're shooting on a longer lens, the background is going to compress in tighter to the subject, as opposed to when you're shooting on a wider lens, in which case there's going to be an exaggeration of the background in relation to the subject. To demonstrate that, I am now going to switch over from my 16mm lens, which has a wider gap in the distance behind me, to my 28-70 zoom, and I'm going to punch that in all the way to a 70mm. Let's check that out. Alrighty, and now we've switched over to that 70mm. We're still at the same f5.6 setting we were using with the Rokinon, but now you can see that there's a little bit less of a distance in between myself and the background here, while on that Rokinon it was more exaggerated. So this should be the same visual aesthetic roughly as the other setup. I had to move the camera way back there, so it might be a little bit off in terms of framing, but it should be pretty close in terms of every other setting except for that focal length. Now, one last thing that I forgot to touch on earlier in terms of practicality is that when you're using a longer focal length, anything you're going to do handheld is going to have more apparent shake to it. Because you're using this longer focal length, it's going to exaggerate every little bump that you make. So you might want to use a wider lens if you're going to be doing any handheld work or even any gimbal work. It'll just help to smoothen that out. Things like OIS can help with that, and digital stabilization in post can also help with that, but it's always best to get it right when you can, right from the get-go. All right, and that's all I got for you guys today. Thank you so much for tuning in, and I will catch you all in the next one. Bye.